Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Thursday, September 12th, 2024 edition of the Iowa 911 Communications Council. We'll now call the meeting to order. Could I have a motion to approve today's agenda? Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. Let's have a roll call. Let's do that.
All right, Chris Jasper,
Jasper's here.
Jeff Miller,
Here.
Mike Bryan,
Here.
Eric Daw, or Tom Berger.
Tom's here.
Thank you. Sean Snyder. Or Chris Hare. Josh Duden.
Here.
Rob Denner.
Here.
Adam Welp was excused. Scott Haviland. How about Taylor Teeple? You do.
Okay, thank you. And could I get a motion to approve today's agenda?
I'll make that motion. Okay, I'll second.
Okay, have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signal by saying aye.
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 Again, same signs. Motion carries. Likewise, could I get a motion to approve the August 8th, 2024 minutes?
Jasper will motion.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
No second.
Okay, any discussions? All those in favor signal by saying aye.
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 Again, same sign. Motion carries. Blake, do you have a report for us?
I do. My slides pulled up. All right, good morning, everyone. We'll do some housekeeping items first. And then I do have kind of a substantial update on legislative initiatives. So just kind of hang tight here. We'll be here for a little bit. Everyone should have gotten notification that we did schedule the PSAP leadership training to be held November 19th. We initially opened 35 seats for that. Those filled up real fast. So we opened up a handful more. There was a few people that were interested in a waiting list. So we just opened up about 5 more seats. So that is being held November 19th. As a reminder, we kind of put that together a couple years back and try to hold it every twice a year or so. And it has been a while since we've held that. So not surprised that it was filled up real fast. Sent out email. It's that time of year that we do annual forms. As a reminder, those are due January 1st. It is the distro list update form. It is the expenditure collection form and the service board membership form. One of the things that we added to that process into that email was a survey that went out as well to really kind of collect some data from you all at the local 911 service board level about your budget surpluses. We want to be able to really articulate what you are planning to use that surplus for. And that kind of goes into the legislative discussion that I'll have in a little bit, but that was helped developed with the Iowa APCO NENA lobbyist. That information will be shared. And I think it'll be really beneficial to have that information in everyone's hip pocket come legislative season. So please do fill that out as well. I think it's only 5 or 6 questions long, and it really shouldn't take you all that long. The next item there, an email will be going out later today. We are going to convene a GIS informational call. It's been about 12 months or so since we really started utilizing all of the good GIS data that you folks put together. And there's been a handful of questions that we've received the last couple of weeks, last couple of months. And so we're going to have folks from Geocom, Comtech, and Zetron on the call. It'll be a short presentation. And then really we'll open it up to questions and answers. And a lot of the questions that we've received is kind of like, we upload all this information into Geocom. What part of it gets digested and used by Comtech? There's kind of some confusion on which boundaries get used. So really we just want to do just a touch base, address some of those things, and then answer any questions you might have. So it would be good for any PSAP supervisors as well as GIS folks to be able to attend that. Of course, we'll record it. So if you can't attend it at that particular date and time, you can still watch it after the fact. We've begun an initiative with Comtech to send out individual emails to all PSAPs to make sure that you are aware of who you have listed as your backup or your alternate routing PSAP. We went through a training process with the portal a couple of months ago, and it was not well attended. I get it, everyone's super busy. So in order to basically accomplish the same goal of being able to make sure you as PSAPs know who your backups are, we're just going to do it a little bit more manually. So look for those emails coming out. I get CC'd on those as well. If you have any questions or want to change any of those alternate routes, it's really just a simple change request form and we can do that. So just be on the lookout for that. If you have any questions, like I said, let me know. Any questions on that slide before I move on? Being none, I will move to the next slide. Just an update on where we're at with GIS uploads. We continue to excel in this area. Again, all 99 counties met the benchmarks for August. As a reminder, we do GIS grant payments quarterly. So at the end of September, we will get those out to your 911 service boards. We have 3 training fund applications to consider a little bit later in the agenda. Warren County has a training application for 911 communicator response to active shooter after active assailant. Cerro Gordo County has an application for domestic and family violence and active attacker. And then APCO has their request for the fall conference. As a reminder, that's a little bit of a standing approval, but we still like to kind of do it formally at the 911 council meeting. NENA is not requesting any training funds for their fall conference. So what you see is really what is on the table for later in the agenda. Any questions on that before I move into some of the legislative initiatives? Hearing none, I will get into it. So, for the last 12 to 15 months, really starting at this 911 council meeting a while back, we were very transparent and open about the funding realities that we find ourselves in at the state 911 program. So at that point, we talked about kind of convening a work group of local stakeholders as well as our office to kind of just discuss various different options and ideas on how to resolve that issue. So there's kind of 2 slides on where we're at on this process. So as that work group has met and concluded its findings and recommendations, we've kind of taken that forward and started socializing those ideas. So we've used different various settings to do that. The PSAP supervisor groups, the regional supervisor groups, I have presented at the Central Iowa and the Western Iowa groups. I've also had a session with the Iowa Communication Alliance. That's the kind of the umbrella group of the local telcos. Had that earlier this week, and now I'm presenting to the 911 Council. And then I present to the Iowa Sheriffs and Deputies Association next week on this as well. So we're at the stakeholder engagement piece of this process. So talked about the local stakeholder work group. It was made up of some of the council members, some PSAPs that were super involved. So really just kind of like that local 911 community to be able to give us feedback to make sure that we had some input and buy-in and ideas from the local level as we walk through our legislative process with an eye towards the upcoming session that starts in January. So as the stakeholder work group met, we kept a couple things kind of at the forefront. We wanted whatever we came up with to be efficient, fiscally responsible, and sustainable. If you've been paying attention to anything at the legislature the last few years, those have kind of been a lot of the buzzwords, and we wanted to make sure that whatever we proposed had a good chance of passing and getting through the process. So we wanted to keep those things in mind. Also, as part of the process, anytime that I've seen 911 legislation work well, it's been done on a consensus building type of process. So that was really at the forefront as well. And that's kind of what we're doing now with the stakeholder engagement. Compromise is a huge one too. As we walk through this in the next few slides, we really tried to keep in mind, like, there's no group that wins and gets everything that they want. There's also no group that loses out substantially either. There's really give and take, really, with all the various stakeholders within 911, within the state. And the other piece is just broader education and understanding. 911 surcharge and Iowa Code 34A, those are hard things to understand. It can take years to fully understand it. And the more people that are involved in the process, the more people that understand what we're talking about, is better in the long run. Even if it's not for maybe this legislative session, it's the next time something comes up. You just have that subject matter expertise to really understand both where we're going and where we came from. So right now, as you can see, we're at stakeholder engagement. The next step is really for us as a department, it's submission of a policy proposal. So we have to get kind of a thumbs up to be able to run legislation. We hope to be able to submit that the end of September and then get a thumbs up to run that as a department bill. So then come January, you would see this proposed bill, if we get approval to do this, you would see this proposed bill come out as a department bill. So sometimes bills get introduced by a particular legislator or legislators. In this case, we're hoping to run this as a Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Management bill. So just kind of keep that in mind. And that's not the end of the stakeholder engagement by any means. We'll continue August, November, December, all the way up to the legislative session to talk to folks, answer questions, hopefully alleviate any concerns that might come to light, and continue to work with stakeholders throughout that process. And then finally in January, the legislative session commences. So that's really the process and the timeline that we're working with here. So most of you who have been around and paying attention, again, we brought this up a number of months ago. Here is the problem. Over the last 5 to 10 years, the amount in the state's portion of the 911 fund has dwindled fairly drastically. So back in 2015, there was around $20 million in cash value. It is now to around $3 million in cash value. And that's for a number of reasons. Through that time period, we passed more through to the local PSAPs, multiple different ways. And we also started expending money on what was traditionally local PSAP costs. So when you look at call handling equipment that is at the PSAP, as well as wireline network costs, those used to be 100% the responsibility of local PSAPs. Through the shared services and through the wireline migration, we started taking on a lot of those costs. And it's a benefit to the state as a whole. It costs us, the state program, more, but really throughout the state, throughout the community, some of those initiatives, like for shared services, ends up saving about $2 million a year as a community. So using economies of scale and purchasing power of the state, those are all good things, but it costs us at the state program more to operate the programs. And they've been popular, right? So like 80 PSAPs are on shared services, using kind of the state's portion of that to subsidize those costs. So it's been well received, and I think saved the state a lot of money, but we're to the point where to continue to do those things, we need to look at doing something, change the financial relationships. So really, we looked at a pretty large paradigm shift. And again, one of the other words that gets used at the Capitol quite a bit these days is alignment. So we're trying to align better the financial model. In the past, there was really 2 separate 911 networks, one wireless and one wireline, and 2 surcharges, wireline and wireless. And those 2 things are really kind of siloed, right? So the local community really took care of all things wireline surcharge, to include receiving the wireline surcharge and wireline network. And then our office really took care of the wireless network and received the wireless surcharge. Right now, we're kind of in between mode. We're kind of in a hybrid. We still have the 2 surcharge models, with local service boards receiving the wireline surcharge and our office receiving wireless surcharge. But all the calls traverse the network that are one network that's really just currently being funded with wireless surcharge. So one network, but the surcharge is paying for it separately. The other thing to think about is right now that means wireline providers, all those telcos, they have to figure out the remittance and the billing for 99 different entities. Wireless community just really has to deal with one entity being us. So what we're proposing is really a one surcharge model where both the wireless and wireline network help fund the wireless and wireline, or sorry, the wireless and wireline surcharge helps fund the wireless and wireline network. And that obviously leads to wireline providers remitting and billing one entity. So obviously from a local perspective, you probably have some concerns about that. So we're going to talk through how that actually works. The work group came up with a proposal to increase the surcharge from the current $1 per telephone line to $1.20 per telephone line, and that is on a per month basis. So the last time the surcharge was touched was in 2013. At that point, I believe it went from 65 cents to $1, and it hasn't been touched since then. So over 10 years. A simple inflation calculator will show that that's in 2013, that same dollar today is $1.34. Again, the current legislature is probably not too fond of rate increases, so we really try to keep that as low as possible. And again, by opening up the wireline surcharge as part of our funding as well, it really keeps that rate increase lower. So the recommendation is to keep the pass-through amount the same. So today, we pass 60% of the wireless surcharge through to local 911 service boards before we pay a bill. Right off the top, anything we get on a quarterly basis, 60% of it goes through to the local 911 service boards. We maintain our 40% to run the network, pay for transport, pay for GIS services, pay for shared services. So we propose keeping that relationship the same. The difference, of course, being that means the entire wireline surcharge gets packaged with the wireless surcharge and gets put through the same formula. The next bullet there has an asterisk because it has an entire slide to itself, and we'll get to that on the next one. But that also means that what we're proposing is whatever happens with wireline cost recovery would also be the sole responsibility of the state program. Right now, wireline cost recovery is funded by local 911 service boards. We think it only makes sense that whoever receives the surcharge also pays cost recovery. Now, that's a big caveat that we'll get into in the next slide. So more to come on that one. The next bullet there is a modification of the current funding formula, and not the pass-through amount, right? Like there's more to the formula than just passing through 60%. The next part of that, as far as how individual counties arrive at their funding amounts per quarter, right now is based on 65% square area and 35% call counts. We propose moving that to 50-50. And the reason is because when you consider moving the wireline surcharge to be received by our office, larger, more populated counties are disproportionately impacted by that. More populated counties by nature have more landlines. So this tries to right that ship, basically, to make sure that larger counties are not more disproportionately impacted by this change. So what we really tried to do is make sure that there was no big winners and no big losers in this scenario at the local level. We really tried to make sure that nobody really saw big of an impact. The vast majority of local 911 service boards actually get additional revenue through this process than they would have received under the current funding model. So all of that movement comes out to an additional 6.6 million annually for our programs, and statewide an additional 1.2 million for local 911 service boards. Obviously, that's broke out and spread out over 99 counties, but that's the kind of the net increase of all of those changes. One thing to consider, and it goes to the survey portion that I talked about earlier, way back when I started this 20 minutes ago. there is a perception or a narrative that local 911 service boards already have too much money in their surplus budgets. I've heard very loud and clear that local PSAPs and local service boards disagree with that narrative, but nevertheless, the narrative exists. So we had to be very careful and cautious about giving local service boards more money. So we're already fighting this narrative that exists, that you have too much. We wanted to make sure we kept you whole as possible, maybe a small increase, but really thread the needle on not having to fight the battle of local service boards having too much. But I also heard loud and clear that it was more preferred to do that education, that you don't have too much. So that's the reason for the survey, is to really take a picture of what you are saving money for. What projects are you saving money for? How long did it take to be able to make that purchase? Is it 3 years? Is it 4 years? And really use that data to help, paint that picture that if anything, you need more money, not less money. So again, that's kind of why the approach is a little bit disproportionate there. The next bullet there, and it has its own slide as well, is an implementation of SIP routers. So that it just helps the next gen transition move us forward. Currently, we use Lumen legacy selective routers. At some point, those need to be decommissioned. They're called legacy for a reason. And we want to implement IP routers, which moves us forward in the next gen 911 world as well. It basically keeps all 911 traffic in an IP format throughout the call flow process. Then the final bullet there is a study on the concept of managed services. This was an idea that came from a local PSAP. I should also add that the movement of the wireline surcharge to the state program also was an idea generated by a local PSAP. It did not come from us. So the study on the managed services piece, we didn't have time to fully flush this out in anticipation of the upcoming legislative session. So we want more time to study it. What this does is it allows a PSAP who might be struggling with staffing or resources or management to enter into agreement with a nearby PSAP, perhaps a larger PSAP, to help manage that smaller struggling PSAP. So it allows the sharing of staff and resources. It might allow a PSAP to close overnight and really reduce overhead. Again, the concept here, this would be a local PSAP decision, nothing that's mandated. And again, at this point, it needs further study and fleshing out. So nothing would be done, to make that, solidify that. This upcoming legislative session, just study it over the course of the next year. So that is the proposal in a nutshell. The big kind of elephant in the room then becomes cost recovery. And the definition that I'm using for cost recovery is there in italics. It's the cost of carrier transport from customer to point of ingress or the entry point of the state 911 network. And we've talked about this the last couple months. The FCC report in Order 21479 really attempts to address this, both the cost relationship as well as the point of entry. And that kind of goes back into the SIP routers as well, right? Like both of those things really play off each other or are all interconnected, I should say. So back in 2001, the FCC had a similar ruling called the King County ruling, but that was very specific to wireless providers. It basically stated that from that point on, it was the wireless provider's responsibility to get their traffic to the point of entry of the state 911 network. Since then, Iowa has continued to pay wireless cost recovery. That is a cost that the state program funds. It is very well spelled out in Iowa Code 34A. There's rules to the game, basically. And that is set to sunset in 2026. So starting after 2026, in theory, unless something changes, there will be no more wireless cost recovery in Iowa. 34A is pretty silent as far as wireline cost recovery. Cost recovery is currently paid by local service boards. And as a reminder, this is something that, as part of this proposal, we at the state program would take on whatever happens with cost recovery in the state. I don't know what's going to happen with cost recovery in the state. I suspect, and any of the telcos that might be listening in will probably easily weigh in as well. There's probably a desire from the telco perspective to continue that on. At the bare minimum, I would like to see something codified in 34A, so there's some rules to that game. So again, just a little bit of a snapshot. Right now, as far as wireless cost recovery, wireless calls make up 911 calls, and it costs under $1 million a year in cost recovery. We don't have an exact number on what wireline cost recoveries is. Again, because those are paid for at the local level, we don't see it at the state. But we did a study a number of years back and came up with the estimate that it is about $2.5 million a year, and that makes up 20% of 911 calls in the state. So again, it's definitely, it's a huge part of the discussion. It needs to be part of the legislative package. Just know that if all of that proposal comes to be, we at the state program would take on whatever happens with wireline cost recovery. So the FCC report and order is out there as well. It has not gone into effect yet. It is not in the Federal Register. So more to come on that entire topic, but it is part of the entire conversation that we need to have. That's why it was supposed to be hitting. So the implementation of SIP routers, talked about it already a little bit. This is one of the things that, we have a cost estimate on what it would take to move this forward. It obviously helps us with our next gen transition as well. And this is one thing that would also be funded by the state program. We like this part being specifically called out within the legislation, just to give kind of the legislative mandate to do this. It kind of makes it, more important. I think we would probably do it anyway. Like it's a good thing to work towards, as the program, but it really gives us the legislative, initiative, the impact, the backing, to specifically do this project as well. So, and again, that would be funded by our portion of the revenue stream as well. So that was a lot. I would take any questions at this time on the legislative proposal as it stands today. Again, we have to submit our policy proposal basically by the end of the month. So while there is a little time to make modifications, I would need to hear a pretty good consensus of how to change that policy proposal at this point. So there's still some more slides as far as my presentation goes, but it's not related to legislation. So it's a good point to pause and see if there's any feedback.
Blake, this is Mike Bryant. Can you hear me?
I can. I'm going to turn you up though in the room. Go ahead.
So one, can you send us these slides?
Yep.
To the delta, the 1.2 million increase to the local level. So I assume that's a delta increase. I mean, you have more revenue in, lose wireline directly, and blah blah blah. So it's a positive number.
Yep, correct.
Did you folks, or were you able to, because I'm sure this will come up at some point, maybe not, but do a spreadsheet so-called for each? I know there's no big winners or big losers, but I don't like to use the word winners or losers. There's some that will gain and some that will lose. What we'll say in a broad term, generally speaking, an insignificant amount, a big delta from where they are now, I guess, if you will. But did you run spreadsheets for each PSAP, each county?
Yes. So you can imagine I ran about, 25 different scenarios.
Yep.
And so, yes, when I got to a scenario that looked like it would work, I did fully flush that out by county. Okay. There's still variables in that. And because we have to use the Department of Management budgets that get submitted by local 911 service boards. So that would be the one variable. And while any loss at a local level is gonna be a big deal. I would tend to classify it as not a huge loss, but like I said, I understand that any loss is significant. But also, we're also, looking to take on cost recovery. We
Right.
end up with this model passing more through at the end of the fiscal year, which has dwindled to zero. So there's other ways that you can still offset it. But I get that anyone that, is a negative there is gonna be significant.
Well, I'm just, in my experiences over a long period of time with legislative sessions, I know that many times the loud vocal minority controls the silent majority, and just in preparation for that, that's why I was asking. I understand the concept with taking over the cost recovery, and it's hard to see the big picture sometimes if you are that, what we will call, for sakes of this conversation, losing some revenue. Because nobody wants to lose anything. So I get it, but that's why I asked. Thank you very much.
One thing I'll also note, and Phil, if there's any questions, let me know. There are a dozen ways to do this. This is the one that the work group settled on. It might not be the easiest, it might not be the quickest, but it really does, I think, align where the funding mechanism should be in year 2024. There's the things that could still be improved upon, absolutely. And if you ask me, I don't know that I thought that this was going to be what the work group came up with, but it is. So this is kind of where we're at. So any other questions?
Blake, I'm just going to make one more comment. This is Mike again. I will tell you this. I have been through this longer than I believe now anybody else that's on the council. Every legislative session that we've dealt with, because I think I go back to 1996. This is the best, earliest laid out plan ever, period. So I'd like to thank you and all those people who worked on this for this plan.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, feedback? And if you don't want to speak up or have questions that you're not sure, you want to speak up on, by all means, shoot me an email afterwards. I'm happy to address it offline as well.
Blake, can you hear me? This is Rhonda.
Yep.
Hey, Blake, I just wanted to double check, and I know that you've covered several of the pieces of materials, but one of the things that did come up when we were talking about this, and a concern that several have had is, if this plan does ultimately get approved and it goes to the state and so on and so forth, what was the ability to go through and really line out those bills that are going through? Because over the years, we've talked about bills that agencies are receiving, and some of those bills were incorrect, and so on and so forth. And some of the other problems that we're facing that we're still kind of waiting on the FCC. But how are we going to be able to sideline them so that it doesn't, continuously get removed from those percentages? Because I know that a lot of agencies are kind of worried about that. So maybe if you could speak on that as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of confusion in that area. So right now, I mean, it's really 99 service boards that are dealing with 150 telcos, trying to sort through, what of those cost recovery bills are still valid, what can be discontinued or disconnected, what should have been disconnected years ago, and that's just, the current state. So looking forward, what we could be to, what we're looking to do is a circuit audit. So again, fully funded by us with this, kind of newish revenue stream. So before we take those costs on, there are companies out there that really just do this. Like they can sort through what is still needed, what is still necessary, what can be disconnected, to make sure that we kind of have a centralized method of onboarding those costs to our department. So we would go through that process, make sure we know what we're paying for, make sure they're still valid. So really and some PSAPs have already done that, and great, good, really good on those PSAPs, but a lot haven't. So it's really just kind of that onboarding process that we would look to replicate that, but just statewide. Any other questions? All right, if not, we will continue on with the agenda with the normal shared services updates from Zetron.
Good morning, this is Lynn. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Potawatomi County is going live on shared services in 2 weeks, September 25th. Next slide, please. So next month, the Potawatomi County will be green, otherwise no changes. Next slide, please. Just a reminder that the online training portal is available to everyone, whether you are using shared services or not. Current status on that is 35 agencies with 476 users online. If you want to sign up, get involved, you can email Christy there at motivations.com. And I think, next slide, I think that's for me. Oh, yep, we got a newsletter coming up later in September. And if you're interested in getting on the distribution list, just send me an email at lynn.warren@zetron.com. Any questions for me? All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to spending fund requests. I think I'll break these up because I know we'll have some extensions here. Dealing with the first one, Warren County 911 communications response to the active shooter, active assailant for $6,475.41. Is there anyone from Warren County that wishes to speak on that?
Yes. Travis Solon, Director. I have had a lot of people, within my own agency, and I've had others about active shooter type training. So I did a little bit of research. I reached out to Threat Suppression out of North Carolina, and they're willing to come in and give a 1-day training that relates directly to the communication center and their role in an active shooter or active assailant type situation. So I am asking for the funds for that. Warren County will pick up the remaining 10% and offer the class free to anybody who wants to attend. Right now, I've got it tentatively scheduled for October 28th. But I couldn't put anything out until I knew funding was there for sure.
Where would that be, Travis?
In Indianola. I don't have the location pinned down quite yet, but I should have it by the end of the week.
Okay. Any questions? And then I would entertain the idea of a motion to.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Jethro, second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Again, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, next, Cerro Gordo County Domestic and Family Violence and Active Attacker for $8,910. Is anyone from Cerro Gordo wish to speak on that?
This is Heather. I'm online if anybody has any questions. It's basically 2 days of training. So we've kind of done it yearly for the last few years.
Okay, and what are the dates, Heather?
I believe May 5th and 6th. Let me look. May 8th and 9th, sorry.
Okay, anybody have any questions? Okay, hearing none, do I have a motion?
Miller will make that motion.
Thank you. I have the motion. Do I have a second?
Jasper will second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Again, same sign. And motion carries. Okay, Iowa APSCO Fall Conference, $4,758. What do you think on that?
I can speak on it and I'll abstain from voting as well. Our two speakers that we have coming, one, there's no speaker fee. However, we do have airfare and then lodging, travel expenses for her. Then the other one is Dr. Michelle Lilly. She does have a $3,500 speaker fee. And then some costs to drive here and her lodging. So our total is about 4,600. 4,600 roughly, was it 46? But I mean, I'm able to answer any questions if anybody needs anything. 4758.
Any questions? Okay, hearing none, do I have a motion?
Bryant will move.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Jasper will second.
Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Again, same sign. Motion carries. Okay. On to reports. Do we have any technical advisories? Okay, hearing none. Next up would be an update on Iowa Statewide Interoperability Communication System Board. Ms. Nichols.
She is at the Tom Ashton job, but I thought Curtis Walters was going to be here. Is he online?
Okay, apparently we don't have anyone here for that unless there's someone online that we're not aware of.
Deputy Slick Balzer is in the other room,
No, but
but I don't think he has much of a report, so.
Okay.
I have her report. I'm sorry, I'll read it, ish. So she said that, TA requests are changing. Iowa will make a TA request in October up to 5. There's no guarantee that all 5 will be accepted. And then in April, we will get a chance to try again in what they are calling a derby for those that were not accepted. Currently, we are planning to request a COM-L, IMTD, IMCM. And there are a number of cyber resilient 911 TA offerings that this audience might be interested in as well. So just work through the SWIC to request any of those. That's it.
Okay, thank you. All right, and then moving on, an update from U.S. Department of Homeland Security, Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. Mr. Myers, are you on the line?
I am, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Super. Thank you, 911 Council. Thank you for the time today. I appreciate it. We'll get right into this. September is National Preparedness Month, and this has been recognized for quite some time now, with FEMA being the lead. And one of the hallmark tenets of National Preparedness Month is that we're all responsible for preparing ourselves, our agencies, and our families for whatever life may throw at us. It could be a number of things. And the goal here is to build awareness and encourage Americans through outreach that they should be taking steps to prepare for emergencies in their homes, schools, organizations, businesses, places of worship, you name it. The biggest thing here is to know your risk and take the appropriate actions before, during, and after a disaster strikes. Each year has a theme, and this year the theme is island agencies, such as our island areas, such as Hawaii and other territories. If you want to learn more about National Preparedness Month, you can go to ready.gov, and they'll have a very nice summary there, along with a lot of outreach materials for you and your partner agencies. On the next slide, we're going to get down into some cyber advisories, most notably one that was recently released by the FBI, CISA, and the NSA. And this is covering some cyber actors that are affiliated with the Russian military General Staff Main Intelligence Directorate, or GRU. This group has been noted to be responsible for computer network operations against U.S. and other global targets for espionage, sabotage, and reputational harm since at least 2020. Mitigation strategies for this are outlined in this bulletin. It includes prioritizing system updates and remediating known exploited vulnerabilities. Big thing here is making sure that your networks are properly segmented so you don't have an easier avenue for the spread of malicious activity like ransomware or other type of malicious software that might be put on your systems without you knowing. Big thing here as far as preventing access is enabling multi-factor authentication that is phishing resistant for all externally facing accounts, especially for your webmail, virtual private networks, VPNs, and other accounts that access critical systems, because these have been points of vulnerability for other agencies that have experienced an attack recently. You can find out more information by Googling for this specific advisory. I've got a direct link to it listed there, or you can just reach out to me and I'll get you a copy of it myself. On the topic of threat detection and event logs, we have a new best practices document that has been released in a very large partnership, officially released by the Australian Signals Directorate's Australian Cybersecurity Centre, with partner agencies CISA, the FBI, NSA, and other international partners. And the list here is very, very broad and expansive. The goal here is to help agencies detect the increased prevalence of cyber actors employing the living off the land techniques. Living off the land, if you remember, is basically where someone were to gain access to the system and they use things that are already existing on the system to avoid detection but still get what they want out of it. This could be something like fileless malware, various downloads that may not necessarily be noticeable and things like that. Big thing here is that it does outline some key factors for best practices when it comes to logging, such as enterprise approved logging policies, centralized log access, and correlation. The big thing here is you want to take your logs and try to make sense out of it. So if you can correlate your logs to significant things that happen on your system, you'll gain a lot of clarity as far as what's going on. Secure storage and log integrity, and of course, detection strategy for all relevant threats. Very long link there on the slide. This is also one you can search for on our website. And as always, if you don't have a copy of it, please let me know and I'll get it to you. Getting into the last topic for the day, GETS and WPS, our priority telecommunication services. Just a quick summary of what these are. GETS, again, is available for public safety and critical infrastructure users for priority on their wireline calls. We also have wireless priority service available for wireless calls. In addition to that, we have telecommunications service priority for circuit repair and installation. And most notably, one of the big things here that's popped up recently elsewhere is that if you have TSP on circuits that say serve a PSAP and you need to emergency relocate that PSAP, this would allow you to expedite the installation of those new circuits to serve that temporary site. So TSP, also a very valuable service. Currently, GETS and WPS are available only for voice. There's still some work going on to try to enhance the experience on data when it comes to wireless networks. And this is all easily usable through the PTS Dialer app that does incorporate more into a simpler user interface for our mobile devices. Keep in mind that GETS is designed for wireline only. So if you're using wireless, you should be using WPS. And the big thing here with these services is that priority does extend beyond network boundaries. Specifically for Iowa, on the next slide, we do have some numbers. Apologize for the typo on the top. In Iowa, we have currently right around just shy of 3,200 active GETS accounts. That's around 6.7% of all eligible lines. With WPS, we have right around 2,600 to 2,700 lines that are active. This is around 5.6%. These numbers are depressed slightly because the eligibility for GETS and WPS was expanded quite a bit a few years ago with the expansion of these programs into the 16 critical infrastructure sectors. So if you want to learn more about GETS and WPS or have your agency personnel have access to those services, again, GETS and WPS are free. You can log on to CISA.gov/PTS and learn more. TSP, typically your service providers will charge you a fee for that. That doesn't come from us, but that is something that is available if your agency is interested as well. Regional items of note will be the last thing I discussed today. Again, we're down here at the Central States COMEX, and your SWIC is participating actively and contributing to the exercise, and hopefully she's having a little bit of fun while she's doing it. As mentioned before, the technical assistance request period does open up in October with target delivery dates that would extend through October through April. Again, we fully acknowledge that longer fuse projects may extend beyond that, and we'll work with you on that as much as we can. Your SWIC will have more information on that. And lastly, the interoperability marker assessments were completed in Region 7. Results are currently being tabulated, and distribution of those results should take place within the next few months. Typically, these are done sometime around the November through January timeline, as there's a lot of data to tabulate nationwide. That's what I have today. I can go ahead and take any questions.
Okay, thank you, Chris. All right. With exception to what was already talked about in the legislative issues, there are other legislative issues that anyone would like to bring up. Okay, hearing none. Do we have any information sharing by council members?
One thing, if I can talk for a second. The Iowa APCO-NENA conference is coming up October 14th and 15th, and I'll let Chris talk about his NENA Day, but our APCO Day, our keynote speaker, Dr. Michelle Lowy, she's well known for her research of 911 telecommunicators, PTSD, stress management, depression. Registration is open, but we also are circulating or socializing a survey of Iowa data from telecommunicators that she can speak on that day. So socialize that, give that to all your dispatchers. If you did not get the email, you can reach out to me or any other APCO people, and we'll send that out. We're trying to get a good, baseline for Iowa so that she can talk, about stuff going on here as well, which she's talking about that day.
Okay, thank you. Anything else?
Since you mentioned it, I can just talk about the NENA Day real fast. So NENA Day is Monday. One of the things that we heard from some of our members is that they wanted to hear from dispatch centers across Iowa about events that have transpired, things that went good, things that went bad in their dispatch centers. So we have Urbandale Fire is coming to talk about a Mayday incident that they had where the Mayday traffic was actually missed over the radio. Des Moines PD is coming to discuss their some of their civil unrest that they dealt with. Scott County is coming to talk about the building collapse that they dealt with, what went good or what went well, what didn't go so well. So we have some exciting events from around Iowa that we're going to be discussing and hopefully learn from.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Okay. I don't have any new business or old business or travel requests. Do I have any business from the floor from people in this room? Okay, hearing none, do I have any business from anyone who's joined us virtually? Okay, hearing none, then I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Jasper will make the motion.
Okay, do I have a second? All right. All those in favor, signal by saying aye.
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 We're adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.